Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge,
And I'm Ashley Sledge.
and let's talk horror.
So we are doing our review on the first Omen.
This is going to be spoiler free, so we're going to tell you about our positives of the film, the negatives of the film, and then our overall thoughts and final ranking.
So let's get to the positives. The cinematography in this film is so beautiful. The shots throughout Rome. It definitely looks like it was made in the 70s. Like I definitely got the 70s feel and I loved that. It was really great.
Yeah. The acting throughout the whole movie is absolutely fantastic. I thought they casted it very well, and it really did help to bring out the bright spots of the film.
There is a birthing moment that you want to cover your eyes.
It's like a holy shit moment.
Like, wait, real? What? What's happening?
Easily the best part of the film.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
It was very well done. It looked creepy. It was like, okay, we're going there.
Yeah. The "It's All for You" moment, we all seen it in the trailer, which was obviously redone from the original. They really upped the ante on this one, though. They take it a little bit farther than they did in the original, and I like the way that they did it.
I like how they really use the real riots known as the Movement of 77. That was a great little
nod to history.
Yeah, a nod to history, and they had real events in there. So I did like that.
And the body horror that they did do, the practical effects. There's a couple good practical deaths. There's a couple other ones we'll talk about here in the negatives, but they did have some good body horror with the deaths that they had in the film that they did practically. So those are some of our positives about the film. Let's get into some of our negatives about the first Omen.
So the opening, there's a very uncomfortable scene that, yeah, it definitely makes you feel icky. And I know you know, because I'm sure you've seen the OG. So yeah.
Obviously, it's very important to the story of the film. It's just a negative
it's
to us.
It just makes you feel so like, ugh.
These negatives are going to be weird because Ashley and I don't feel the same about some of these.
No.
For instance, I think that there was a way overusage of jump scares in this film. Yeah. I thought that the jump scares, there was just too many of them. They started to get predictable, and I don't know. Maybe one of them I thought was well timed. The other ones just they weren't for me.
I agree to that to an extent. But there was one in particular that I was like, oh, like it really did get me. Like it was like an entire like scene.
Yeah.
And it really got me.
It had a payoff to it, but still for me wasn't my thing.
So there was a lot of filler time. You probably could have cut this down by at least a half an hour. We're not spoiling anything, but
it's hard not to.
It really is. But there was a lot of things that could have been cut out.
Yeah, that were not important to the story at all. There's a CGI fire scene. CGI the idea of it was great. What they did in the idea of it was fantastic. The execution of the CGI fire was not as excellent of an execution. So wasn't a big fan of the CGI fire scene. And if you've seen it, you know. If you haven't, go watch it.
The twist, you kind of guessed it pretty early on, if you want to call that a twist.
Right. It's pretty easy.
It's pretty obvious, yeah.
Here's where me and Ashley are very different. I was bored throughout a lot of this movie. And you know, supernatural religious horror is kind of my favorite. So I thought Ash and I would feel a little bit different. I thought our views would be swapped. But there was a lot of this movie that I was like, can something happen now? And that's usually not me throughout these films. But I was bored to tears at certain parts of this film.
See, I was in it the entire time. I really loved the acting, and I just felt like, yeah, like my attention was in it for most of it. I do agree with it could have been cut down, but I wasn't bored like you were.
Right.
There is too much SA, and I get it. It's
important to the story.
Yeah, I understand that that's important, but it's just still, it's like, oh, I hate that. I hate that this is what we have to do. Yeah. But yeah.
The scenes could have been worse.
Oh yeah, they absolutely they were not as bad as the
Oh,
OG. That's for
no.
sure.
So yeah, I think that the SA scenes, they were done well, but still a little bit too much for our liking. So
Yeah.
without being too spoilery, those are our negatives. So now we're going to get into our final thoughts and overall ranking of the first Omen.
So now we're going to get into some of our final thoughts about the movie. Nell Tiger Free, she did amazing. She was one of
Yeah.
the positives of this film for me, and she is what kept my attention.
Mm-hmm.
She was very good.
And then obviously Bill Nye. All of you that know us know we're big Shaun of the Dead fans. We are big Hot Fuzz fans.
Mm-hmm.
So to see him show up, I was like, I mean, he's kind of a piece of shit, but
Yeah.
to see him show up, I was like, that's pretty cool.
He's a piece of shit in this film.
Yeah, in the
Not in real
film.
life.
Yeah. In the film, I meant.
Yeah. And it really doesn't rely on the OG. Like it's its own story. If you've never seen the first one, you know, you're not really
Suffering.
so yeah, there's not a whole lot that connects it.
Well,
So
with this being a prequel, you
yeah.
kind of, and that's one of my. And again, we're trying to be as spoiler free as we can, but I'm not a big prequel guy, and the end of this movie really had no tension for me. Um, they try to play up something that might happen, and if you've seen the OG, that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's a big reason why I think that I don't like prequels, especially in horror, because
Mm-hmm.
you have a pretty good feeling of who's safe and who's not, and that's a big part of this climax. So yeah. So what would your overall ranking of the film be?
I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
The acting was great. There is a lot of times I felt very uncomfortable. I had my knees up in the chair, and if a movie can do that for me, then I'm gonna give it a higher score. So
I'm going with a 2 out of 5. The birthing scene was so good. Um, I thought that it could have used more tension. It could have used more suspense rather than the jump scares. But the acting was phenomenal. The direction and the cinematography were absolutely
mm-hmm.
beautiful. The attention to detail was great, but it just didn't do it for me. I wanted it to because this is my favorite subgenre of horror,
Yeah.
but it did not do it for me. So let us know in the comments if you've seen the first Omen. What are your thoughts on it? Do you agree with me, or are you more on Ashley's side? You were a fan of the film. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. If you haven't already, guys, please like and subscribe. It really does help to build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are down in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror,
Stay who you are.
and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye guys.